This country was once the envy of the world. It possessed everything from abundant natural resources to an almost intact infrastructure from the British colonial era. And it didn't experience the devastating war with China. With such resources, it's not surprising that it once had the potential to become one of the most powerful and wealthy forces in Asia, surpassing even names like South Korea and Taiwan. But now it has become the biggest war zone in Southeast Asia, with numerous factions involved. So, what direction is this conflict heading? Which faction has the potential to win and bring peace to Myanmar? Or are all sides plunging the country into a dark and grim future where nothing remains but war? Music, the seeds of conflict in Myanmar have been sown long ago. However, due to video time constraints, today we will only cover the period from after the coup on February 1st, 21 to the present. More detailed information may be available in the future. More perspectives on the conflict here will be shared with you through videos of increasingly better quality. So don't forget to like and subscribe to receive the latest video updates. Now, let's get to the main. Following the coup on 2021, carried out by the Myanmar military to overthrow the democratically elected government of President Win Min and Prime Minister Ashraf, rebellion against the coup and a wave of violence erupted throughout the country. Many protest groups organized themselves, trained militarily, or joined forces with separatist tendencies. A number of independent armed groups also took advantage of the Myanmar military's busy suppression of violence to launch operations, initiating a major war in the country. Among these, the first notable forces are, of course, I'm not referring to some Korean car company, but to the Kachin Independent Army, established in with the goal of the Kachin movement aimed to establish a sovereign, autonomous state for the Kachin people. This force was later supported by the People's Liberation Army (PLA), the armed wing of the Communist Party of Myanmar's CPB, and resumed operations on March 15, 2021, when communist fighters crossed the border from China and the K9 group. Speaking of the Communist Party of Myanmar, one cannot ignore the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance (MND), an armed group whose main area of operation is the Kola region. This group was formed in 1989 as a breakaway from the communist government. By October 10th, this force had allied with two other groups, the Arakan Army Saye, Tang TLA National Liberation Army, to form the Northern Alliance, the second most formidable opponent of the Myanmar military government. Alongside the Kachin and the Northern Alliance, a third group, actively involved in the civil war, is known as the 4K, which includes the People's Liberation Army. The Kenjika tribe was founded in 1960. The Kenjika Army, an armed wing of the Kenji National Progressive Party, was founded in 1957. The Kenjika National People's Liberation Front (KN) PLF has been active since 2023, and the Kenjika People's Defense Force KNF was established shortly after the 2021 coup. Although the 4K alliance was not officially formed until June 2023, individual members had already engaged in separate clashes with the government forces. Next, it's impossible not to mention the People's Defense Force (PDF), established by the National Unity Government of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar on May 0, 2021. Based on opposition to the coup, in coordination with various other armed Chinese organizations, such as Madalbago Sajing, Chinlanchin, and Kenjika, to launch an armed revolution against the military government. According to some unofficial data, the number of participating fighters in this alliance is estimated to be. The PDF includes units from local armed groups, potentially numbering up to people. This can be considered a large force, and the greatest threat to the military government in Myanmar. In addition, another local armed group is also involved in the fighting, but is not as active and tends to maintain control of its own territory at this point. You to pause for a few seconds to remember the important factions we have just listed. As the nature of warfare in Myanmar has very unique characteristics, almost impossible to find in any other modern war. Watch the video until the end to discover the reasons behind these unique features. Now, let's look at the most notable battles of the Myanmar Civil War. March 13, the prelude to the war. Marking the beginning of the conflict, Kiev forces attacking a military base of the military government in Moga Town on March 25, 2021. The Kachin forces clashed with the government army in the Battle of Alam Man. In that battle, Kachin soldiers successfully captured 2 outposts from the government forces. The Myanmar military responded immediately with 2 light infantry battalions. The government army also launched an attack, carrying out 14 airstrikes by men. The two sides temporarily ceased hostilities. The Kachin army, thanks to capturing the enemy base, gained public attention. The newly formed Kachin army had its first clash with the government army in the town of M in northern Bangsan. Simultaneously, battles between the government army and the Kachin Defense Forces and some local ethnic armed forces also took place. The government army initially suffered losses until May 29, when they were forced to use artillery to repel the opposing forces. Battles with small groups of rebels occurred, especially at border outposts, causing the government forces to gradually lose control. In 2021, the fighting tended to ease due to the collapse of Myanmar's healthcare system amidst a surge in COVID-19 cases. Despite the critical national situation, on September the Myanmar National Unity Government still declared a nationwide state of emergency and launched a people's defense war against the military regime. The frequency of shelling attacks on small local rebels increased. By December 2021, the Myanmar government army began deploying light infantry battalions to launch attacks aimed at regaining the initiative against opposition armed groups. However, most of the fighting remained in the form of small skirmishes, primarily with casualties of around 30 people per battle. Sensing its prestige was at risk from the rising tide of resistance, the military government decided to deploy stronger military units and use a range of new weapons to quickly defeat the remaining forces. In response, the KNLA gained significant control over territory and launched attacks on army barracks, police stations, and government administrative offices. 2022. Fighting broke out between the KNLA and government forces in the town of Lok, the capital of Karen. The armed group, after blocking supply lines, attempted to seize government positions in the city. Government forces deployed bombers and helicopters to hunt down the rebels. By February, the KNLA attacked government forces in the Segang region. Government supply and troop transport ships were ambushed. Most notably, one ship was burned during the attacks. The offensive lasted until February 18th, with hundreds of soldiers killed. From March to May 2022, the military government bombed rebel areas in San Francisco. In response, the KLA attacked and seized a town from the government in a nighttime skirmish. The area is the epicenter of the conflict. Government efforts to suppress the rebellion are hampered by the need to deploy troops across a wide area. nationwide to counter opposition resistance. 2022. The 4th 15th Infantry Battalion of the military government engaged in fierce fighting in Ba Chin and Bang Chin with other forces, while the rebels launched raids. The government retaliated with arson and sweeps until July 6. The National Alliance declared that approximately 200 government soldiers and militiamen had been killed since January 2022. In August, the Myanmar civil war marked its first sign of escalating out of control when fighting between Arab forces and government forces resulted in 2 mortar rounds landing at a refugee camp in Bangladesh. Government helicopters were reportedly seen attacking rebels from Bangladeshi airspace, causing outrage in the neighboring country. On Myanmar government forces, in conjunction with another local army in Vung Tau, burned hundreds of houses in Kachin state, defeating the other forces in the area. On September 6, 2022, a school in Lakon village, Sajing region, was attacked by Myanmar government forces, resulting in 28 casualties. They claimed that the village was sheltering resistance fighters from the Kachin Independent Army. From October to the end of December 2022, the Myanmar army began implementing a 4-cut strategy to counter rebel forces fighting on local population. At the heart of this strategy was to carry out violent collective punishments against civilian groups deemed to be linked to the opposition army. Through this, the government army would cut off 4 types of supplies for the rebels: food, money, etc. Information and personnel indicate that this strategy was first proposed in the 1960s when the Myanmar army had to fight the Burmese Communist Party. The Myanmar government's 4-cut strategy, implemented primarily through burning villages and executing soldiers, was met with resistance from the Khmer Rouge Kachin Army and the Kachin Liberation Army. The Khmer Rouge Kachin Army and the Khmer Rouge regrouped and launched attacks to seize government bases. From November 21 to 25, 2022, the Myanmar Air Force used K-9 bombers along the border in Sajing state, successfully disrupting the rebels' supply lines. On November 3, 2022,